Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Idle Park Talk Show. It is a pleasure having you all joining and watching. I also want to welcome Lillian, who is a regular contributor to the show. She is what I would call our mental health expert and advocate. So we are getting back to our series on mental health. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about resentment. I am sure that is a feeling that every one of us has felt at some point in our lives. If you haven't, I don't think you're human. But again, resentment is a feeling that we've all felt. Some people will say resentment is like, they describe resentment as someone drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It is a feeling that could be justified, and sometimes it is justified, right? But holding on to it usually ends up hurting the person holding on to it the most. And healing doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it means reclaiming your peace. So, in a nutshell, that is what we are going to be talking about today. What is resentment? Why do we hold on to it? How do we get past resentment, and maybe some of the psychological impact it might have on us as individuals. Lillian, welcome.
Thank you, Asom. That's a great introduction.
Thank you. Let's get into it. Resentment is an emotion. Maybe before you tell me what resentment is, maybe why we decided to take the topic on resentment. What is an emotion? Maybe let's just start there, because my reading tells me it's an emotion, but again, not everyone might know what emotions are. What is an emotion before we start with the topic?
An emotion is simply what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling? Whatever feelings you have, that's what we call emotions. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be anger, it could be happiness, it could be excitement. Those are all feelings. So they are emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one important aspect of our mental health and our overall well-being.
Perfect. So, how would you define or describe resentment? What is that all about?
So it's funny. I didn't want to start with definition, but since you've asked me, let's talk about it. I wanted to start by asking you and our audience a few questions.
Right. Maybe we do that.
Yeah. So what emotions do you have? What do you feel when you feel resentful? What comes up for you when you feel resentful? Is it excitement? Is it being fury? How does resentment show up for you? Is it you shaking, sweating? Because it's different for each person. So how does resentment show up for you?
Honestly, I probably would have been more I would have probably had a more appropriate answer if I knew clearly what resentment was.
Okay.
Because what I thought resentment wasn't exactly what it is, right? So I wanted to start there. And then I would be able to tell you exactly what it feels like. But again, just with the basic knowledge that I have, I think you could feel motivation. You could, because again, you want to prove to someone who you're resentful about, so it could motivate you to do something better or work hard or do better for yourself. It could be deflating, where your resentment just breaks you down to the point where you really can't do much, and you just wallow in that resentment, right? And that is all you feel, and that could break you down and keep you in that position for a long time. So looking at it, in that perspective, it could be positive because it could get you working on yourself or getting you to do better for yourself. But again, it could be too much to bear to the point where you feel defeated or you feel worthless or you feel not up to the task. Depending on again why you are resentful, right? Because again, I think the reason why you have that feeling of resentment definitely contributes to whether or not it boosts or if it breaks you down.
Okay. So Asong, the reason why I asked about how does resentment present for you,
right,
is because it would have automatically answered our question of what is resentment. Because I may present a definition here, but like I said, it shows up almost the same way for different people. The most basic way that we would define it here today is it's a shimmering brew of bitterness, anger, and offense. So it is a slow burning fire in your chest when things do not go your way, or your expectations are unmet, or you perceive injustice. So that brewing bitterness, that anger, that stirs up in you, that comes up, when you're pouring champagne, what drink do we have that mousses when you're pouring it on beer or whatever it is?
Right. Yeah.
So resentment shows up almost like that. It kind of grows and overflows. So what happens when a cup overflows? When you fill a cup with something and it overflows, it spills.
Yeah.
When it spills, what happens? You have to start doing some cleaning. It means that you've put something in a content that cannot sustain. So that's how resentment would show up in us.
Right.
It would consume us and overflow. So when it overflows, we start seeing the dysfunctional behaviors that comes up when you're angry or when you're resentful. It's not all. It's when you're resentful. Anger is different from resentment. So that is the simplest way I would describe resentment. It consumes you. It fills you up. And definitely comes up and shows up in your behavior, which is most likely dysfunctional. So that is one of the reasons why I wanted us to have this conversation today, because we all experience resentment in one way or the other.
Right.
But the question is, do we process and manage these emotions in the healthy ways that we are supposed to? So I think we are having this conversation today so that we can learn how we experience resentment, because for some people, they've never taken time to actually observe
the emotion.
Even observe the some people can't even tell you what happens to them when they are angry or when they are resentful, right? They will just be like, I'm angry and that's it. But there are more emotions that come to it that you could express. So it's a time for us to reflect, to do a self-reflection. How does this come up for me? Then you process it and see the effects that it has on you. You want to know the effects that it has on you. You also want to know what are the needs that you show up, that you need whenever you are being resentful. Because behind any dysfunctional behavior, or underneath every dysfunctional behavior, is a need. So the question is, you would want to reflect yourself and check, what do I need when I behave this way? Or when I'm feeling this way? Because sometimes we don't even know. If I ask you that, okay, you're mad at me now, or you're mad at your wife. What is it that you need? How can she make things right? You won't be able to provide a solution. So it's a time for that self-reflection to start moving towards finding solutions and seeking healthy ways to cope with those negative emotions that come up for us.
So before we kind of go deep into the resentment itself, you've used the words resentment, anger, bitterness, kind of interchangeably. Is it the same thing? Is it appropriate to use them synonymously, or are they different? And if they are, what are some of the differences, without really going into the, I know this is not the key aspect of the conversation, but what's the difference? Because you've used bitterness, you've used anger, you've used resentment? It feels like it's the same thing.
Yeah, so it's good that we have this conversation, because if in the course of our discourse today we keep using either the word resentment or anger, we should know what we are talking about. So it's important that we touch this. It was a good question that you asked. It's important that we touch this so that while we chat, then we will know that, okay, this is what. So resentment is interesting. It's like, when in maths we do subsets. So you have the bigger one, and what is inside is a subset.
Right.
So we have anger as the bigger one. Then the subset in it is resentment. Now, anger happens. It starts with anger, then it moves into resentment. So anger and resentment, the relationship is best described as resentment is a still smoldering ember left after the flames of fire die down. So imagine fire has burnt a certain house down. Then the aftermath of it is what is resentment. So it starts with anger. So anger is the first stage. Then it evolves and goes into resentment.
So would resentment be some sort of a side effect of anger? Technically is putting, and which is more serious, which is more detrimental to our mental health? Is it being angry, or is it being resentful? If you say it's a subset of anger, is one better than the other, or one less destructive than the other?
I would say resentment is a flavor of anger. So meaning you have anger, then one strand of it, which usually is what has developed over time. So anger will normally be the present. I'm angry. So if I'm talking to you now, so I'm angry with you now. So it's about the moment. Then what happens in the future, what happens more after time has passed, is what becomes resentment.
After effect.
Yes, so anger develops into resentment. So anger builds up to become resentment. I don't know if that makes sense.
Neither is better than the other.
I don't know if you want to.
I mean, in terms of the state,
if one
of being angry and the state of being resentful,
then who is more powerful? If one gives birth to the other, there will be no resentment without anger.
So it kind of goes hand in hand.
They are brothers.
They're brothers. Okay.
They are brothers.
Knowing that, and I mean, I'm sure there are 1,000 reasons why a person could be angry and eventually become resentful, right? Are there some common traits, common triggers, common things in our lives that could cause resentment? Or what are some of those common resentment triggers, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. There are many factors that could trigger the buildup of resentment. So one of them is unmet expectations in relationships, with your career and in your personal life. Then you have a situation where you perceive injustice. So you feel you've been treated unfairly. It leads to resentment. It builds up. So that anger builds up from like, I'm not being treated well. Then of course, you continue being angry and it builds up and becomes resentment. Then you have betrayal. When people feel that they are being betrayed by a family member or a friend, a colleague, can lead to deep-seated resentment. Then you have lack of appreciation. When people do not appreciate your efforts, hey, I always do this for my wife, but she's never been appreciative. It builds up into resentment. Then you have competitive environment. When you're in an environment where you always feel rivalry, comparison, always fighting, it leads to that feeling of resentment. Then we also have past grievances. Like we said, it builds up over time. So if I'm angry that Asom didn't speak to me well yesterday, then today I still carry those grievances along with me. Those unresolved issues from the past can lead to resentment as well. Then we have favoritism. So feelings that someone is not being favored or not giving preferential treatment can lead to the buildup of resentment. Then we also have power imbalance. When we feel that we don't have the same power or someone is more powerful than ourselves, we feel powerless and manipulated. It leads to the buildup of resentment. Then unresolved conflicts, like we've given a couple of examples, it leads to buildup of resentment. Then we also have emotional neglect. So not receiving emotional support or attention. It's typical of couples. It's typical even in brother-sister relationship or parent-child relationship. When we feel that our emotions are not being met, our emotional needs are not being met, it leads to that buildup of resentment. So it starts like, I'm angry, my mom doesn't understand what I'm going through. Then, of course, it builds up and shows up in future as resentment. So those are some of the examples that I could share with you about some common. So like you've heard, it's all of us experience that in one way or the other. So it's not a conversation meant for a specific person. It's for each and every one of us. I, myself here, you, anybody experiences resentment in one way or the other. So let's have this conversation. Let's reflect on what we're experiencing and find ways to cope in healthier ways when we experience those feelings of resentment.
Right. I mean, I of course I am in a relationship. I'm married, of course, and when you talk about unmet expectations, especially in relationships, can we really talk a little bit about that? Because truly, we get into relationships because we have certain expectations, certain wants from the other person in that relationship, and if these expectations are not met, there's definitely emotions that come up, right? Which again, you might get angry, you might feel certain other behaviors, right? What is it about resentment that we people in relationship need to pay attention to when they are dealing with their partners or how they are feeling? I know that it's important because in as much as we feel like we have the best partners, or we say that we have the best partners and we are the best partners, I'm sure somewhere deep inside us there are certain things that we either are not happy about, or that we're angry about, or that we might be resentful about, right? So what is it about this feeling and relationships in particular?
So if I were to answer the question that you asked about unmet needs in relationships, it's very common. Unmet needs could either take the form of, it could be a physical need that has not been unmet. Let's use examples of couples, like you said. Physical touch. I like physical touch. My partner doesn't like it, so he doesn't give me that. So of course I would feel that my needs are not being met. Emotional needs not being met. I want someone to talk to me every time I come back from work. Probably if you just check in on me and say, hey Lily, how was your day today? Just that lack of checking or probably lack of communication could leave me feeling that I'm alone. And that feeling of being alone would make me feel stressed, would make me feel sad, would make me feel lonely, isolated. Those are my emotional needs not being met. Let's talk about mental needs. I feel stressed, right? I've come back from work. I feel stressed. And I expect my partner to probably engage in a conversation with me to check in, probably, how are you doing? How was your day? Just that conversation will boost me mentally. So it's interesting, like most of the different forms of well-being are interconnected, and they could mean one thing and mean another at the same time. So engaging in a mental, so I have a partner, for instance, who is not interested in conversing with me, or probably asking how my day went, or what was a challenge I faced today. I just want someone to talk to make me feel relieved mentally. So if my partner cannot meet up with that, then of course I am feeling lonely and my needs are not being met. My mental needs are not being met. Socially, I want a partner who maybe on a Friday evening can say, hey, sweetheart, let's step out for a drink or just for a walk at the park. Mm-hmm. Probably on Saturday, let's just go out for a walk. If my partner is not open to little gestures like that or little activities like that as a couple, I would feel lonely. I would feel isolated. I would feel not included in that marriage. Then, of course, my needs, my social needs are not being met. Mm-hmm. So there are just so many ways. Or I even want my partner to call me and just say, hey, have you eaten today? Just that makes me feel that I have someone who cares about me. Mm-hmm. If your partner cannot fit into that, then you find yourself feeling like, hey, my needs are not being met. Maybe for you men, you probably want a woman or a partner who can sit and watch your soccer match with you. And then it would make you feel that I have a good company or I have someone I can exchange my own, social discussions with. She can't fit in. Then, of course, you feel lonely. Probably you have to start seeking for maybe friendship or calling friends or family members to fill that gap. Mm-hmm. Then you feel like your needs are not there. So there are thousands of ways that we may fail to meet up with needs for our partners. Let's look at it at the level of parent and child relationship. Mm-hmm. My child comes right from school. He just wants me to say, hey, how was your day today?
Right.
For him to tell me how his day went. If mom doesn't ask that question, or probably if he's talking to me and I'm not paying attention to what he's saying, that is his emotional need not being met. And he will go to bed saying, oh my God, my mom is never present. She doesn't care about me. Yeah. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And of course, it is clear. I could really see how someone might feel resentful if there is lack of appreciation or if there's betrayal. But can you take a minute to explain to myself and of course our audience how being in a competitive environment would create resentment for an individual or for someone?
In a competitive environment?
Yes.
It would most often when you're in a competitive environment, you feel pressure. You feel pressure. Then if you're unable to meet up with those needs at that time, then it starts building feelings of either you feel like you're being overpressured more than what you should, you're being forced to do more than what your capacity is, or it makes you feel that other people are better than yourself. Okay. Right. I'm in a conversation today with Asom. It's a debate. I can't meet up. Then, of course, I'm feeling stressed. Then I'll develop those feelings of anger and most likely resentment. So that's probably the negative side of competition. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you would see we talked about competition and rivalry.
Right.
Yeah. So it's negative.
Do we always have to feel resentment towards someone, or can resentment be resentment towards our own selves, internal? Does it always have to be resentful about someone, something, or can we be resentful about us, something about us that we are resentful about? Is that possible?
That's an interesting question, Asun, because when there is a situation, right, mm-hmm. most likely because we all always want to deflate things to others. We don't want to take responsibility. We don't want to be accountable as mm-hmm. individuals that we are. And that's why we are having this conversation today. Because when you're resentful, you are hurting yourself. You're not hurting the other person whom you're angry thoughts. Mm. You're hurting yourself. So if you're resentful, you hurt yourself, you put the pressure on yourself, you put the stress on yourself. Either you're in a social gathering and you're not talking to people around you, you're straining yourself, you're trying to focus on one side, you're trying to behave in a particular way. And funny enough, the person you made the resentful thoughts may not even know that that is what is going on. So, but you alone are reading every cues around you, you're overly worked up, you're overly stressed, picking on everything around you, and then you're hurting yourself. So for me, if I were to describe resentment, I would say you're shooting yourself.
In the
You're using
or
a bullet
drinking
You're drinking your own
drinking the poison
like we
and
said
hoping
from the
that
beginning,
someone else dies from it,
and
right?
hoping that someone else dies. So I just gave an example of someone in a community. You're angry at someone, you're trying to turn your face, you're trying to, but the person doesn't even know that that is what you're experiencing.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of mental work, you're stressed. It leads to headache. It leads to a lot of health issues.
Mm.
When you're resentful,
Mhm.
it weighs down physically. You can tell that the person looks stressed. Mentally, you're not relaxed. You'll be stressed. Emotionally, you will not be in a good space. So it is like shooting yourself,
Mm.
picking a gun and giving that bullet right on your leg.
Right. Before I want us to talk a little bit about why it is hard to let go of resentment. But before we get to that, why is it hard for us to even talk about it? I can tell you 100% that in my 40 plus years of life,
Mhm.
no one has ever approached me to say, I am resentful towards you because of this or because of that. And
Mhm.
I don't think I remember, I don't think it's something that I do often. Why is it so hard for us to talk about our resentment? Why is that a difficult thing to happen?
As long as it's very simple. It takes work. It takes some work to discuss or to address resentment. If I'm angry at you, I need to put myself together. I need to be ready to confront you. And that's me putting in some work. And most people don't want to put in the work. So they rather just stay in their comfort zone and do their mental work, but not actually doing work like talking, approaching someone. And even in relationships, many relationships suffer because people do not open up and they are not honest about the feelings that they have, the negative feelings that they have. Most often, your partner doesn't even know exactly why you're angry, but then they just know you're angry, probably because you're putting up a certain behavior. Either you're stonewalling them, you're avoiding them, you're not engaging in conversations. You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, simplest way to put it, people do not want to put in the work. It takes some work to address resentment. Addressing resentment will first mean addressing yourself, doing that self work, then having a conversation with the other person. Because if I'm telling you that you did hurt me today, you would ask me, how did I hurt you?
Yeah, so you need to think
So I
about.
have to do I have to actually take time and say, hey, when you did this, this is how I felt. Then I felt this way, then that. That time that you're taking to have that open and honest conversation is what many people are not willing to do. And mark you, sometimes the reason behind people being resentful is not valid. So of course, we can't really have a conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
They would either it's a mental health situation of looking at things black or white. Oh, yesterday when Lillian greeted me, she had the tone or the way she looked at me, I didn't like it. So I'm mad at her. She feels that she's so beautiful. You get what I mean? Now, that is someone making their own impression and then building up feelings from there. So if you were to ask her tomorrow, say, hey, come, let's have this conversation, the argument will not be valid. So it takes some work, some self-reflection. So people do not want to do the work on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons why you would hardly have people address or have conversations around resentment.
Would it be fair to say that, again, this is just me thinking, and maybe this is how I feel personally, that it creates a sense of weakness in you when you attempt to express how you feel about others?
That is
someone might just say it's I call it petty. It's like it's you're upset or over because again sometimes this resentment is over really, someone might say trivial things, right? But again, trivial to them, but serious issues to you because you are having that feeling.
Mhm.
Would it be fair for someone to consider you weak, or would it be fair for you to consider yourself weak if you attempted to address resentment towards whoever it is that you're resentful about?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because it brings us back to, it will take us back to our conversation that we would soon talk about. Why don't we like letting? Why don't we let
Why
go?
it's hard to let go?
So it goes back to the question of there is power and there's vulnerability.
Mm.
So weakness, like you said, will mean vulnerability. That's how we describe it. So most people do not want to be vulnerable. Vulnerable means that what? Expressing yourself, being genuine, being honest, showing the side that everybody wants to always show up as. I'm strong, I'm so comfortable, I'm capable of handling situations. But if I walk to you as to say, hey, yesterday the way you spoke to me, I didn't like it. One, it's given, that's my thought, as in me who is a vulnerable, who feels that I'll be weak if I have that conversation. First of all, Asun would think that he's very important in my life. That is why I'm trying to meet him for a conversation. But of course, I can do without Asun, so I don't need him. So of course, why even bother to have the conversation? But now, unfortunately, when you fail to have those conversations, it eats you up.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are all social beings and we need others to thrive. I don't know if it answers your question.
That makes sense. It's like you it's like how what metaphor can I use? It's like, showing your underbelly, the soft side of you. It comes across like that, and nobody wants to show people what their sensitive sides. Now this person knows that this behavior causes stress, causes me to be upset. Now he might tell his friend or her friend, and they might use that against me, right? Because again, I've opened up and I've exposed my
weakness,
my weakness,
my vulnerability.
Yeah, my vulnerability to them, and now they might take advantage, right? So I guess I understand the point you're making pretty well now.
So I want to use another example, practical for couples, that would fit in this situation, and you will see how most people, they say we are our own. There is a saying that says we are our own enemies. It comes back down to this conversation and resentment. Imagine you making love to your partner. I'm giving that example now for couples.
Mm-hmm.
Making love to your partner, and then you do not meet her needs in bed.
Mm.
Now, your partner, I'm using the most vulnerable thing so that it's very clear. I want to paint that picture. Now, normally, so there is vulnerability on one side and there's power on the other hand. So now, when we have open conversations about our needs, we usually see it as vulnerability or as weakness. But on the contrary, it is power. It is strength. It is power. It is control that we have. Okay, now, my partner slept with me. My needs were not met. After the session, a normal and fair person will sit down with their partner and say, hey, sweetheart, this is how I felt. I would like to see more of this, probably next time. Right. Now, my partner, the partner in question does not know that my needs were not met. Mark you, he doesn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using a man and a woman. So partner who is husband does not know that wife's need was not met, because wife has not communicated. Wife has chosen not to be vulnerable. Wife has chosen not to show her weakness, what she calls weakness. But unfortunately, that is where she has her power, and that is her control that she has over herself. And that's the bridge between her needs being met is her opening her mouth, which is a power that she has to communicate. Now she fails to communicate. From that moment, she starts giving you attitudes around the house. But you wouldn't know where it's coming from, and she will never tell you, and you will never imagine that is where the problem is. Then it builds up. Now it's a ripple effect. It grows. like I said, resentment grows. It doesn't stay on the same spot. Once you start feeling resentful and you don't address it and you don't manage it well, it builds up, it grows into something, it spills into other areas of your life and develops and grows more. So, of course, the couple continue to struggle. Now, it would take probably a family member or some other person for one day for your wife to disclose that that is where my problem started. This man has not been doing this to me. When all along you were thinking that maybe all she wanted you was for you to help her wash the dishes in the kitchen.
So of course that communication, that communicating your resentment and addressing it is pretty important.
Yeah.
In relationships, of course, and generally in life, I think if you're resentful, that conversation needs to happen somehow. Find a way, without feeling too vulnerable and coming across as weak or too petty.
So would you say being honest about your needs, because it's usually about what we need. Most people will not say what they need. I need you to be my friend, or I need you to tell me you're sorry. I need. Would you say people expressing their needs is a vulnerability or a strength or a power that they have in a relationship?
You could make both arguments. I think it's looking at it critically. You could argue that it opens certain pieces and parts of you which might be exploited. And again, I think that is where the feeling of weakness is, because you feel like I've exposed a part of me that could be controlled, or could be poked and could be made fun of. But again, at the end of the day, I think there's strength in expressing how you feel about things, right? Because again, like we said initially, it takes you to have a reflection, to really think about what it is that you're feeling, and why are you feeling in that particular way, right? And going through that reflection and coming out to articulate and express what it is you're feeling and why you're feeling in a certain way, I think is strength. Strength in the fact that it takes courage to do that. Strength too, because it at the end of the day, it doesn't leave that relationship in the same spot. There's definitely going to be movement in that relationship, which is positive, right? So that too for me is strength. Strength in the sense that it gives the other person an opportunity to reflect. If they are smart enough and wise enough and caring enough, it gives them an opportunity to think about what it is that they did that might have caused that resentment in you, and hopefully find ways to avoid that. Take the sexual relationship that we just talked about. Now, you haven't satisfied me, and I am vulnerable enough to bring that to your attention, right? Now it gives you the opportunity to think about what it is that I did during that process that did not yield the results that we both were hoping, right? What is it that I can do differently, or do better, or do less of? So it gives the other person the opportunity to reflect about their actions as well, which again, at the end of the day, if you look at the pro and the cons, yes, I would say that the pros carry the day, right? I think there's a lot more advantage in expressing and sharing that vulnerability, as opposed to keeping it to yourself and considering it to be a weakness, or to be a secret that you really can't share. I think there's growth when people are vulnerable, and when people come out and talk about emotions. I know they say men don't do that, men shouldn't, men, you can't express your emotions, but again, emotions, once they're expressed, it could be dealt with.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think people should do a lot more of that expression of emotion, right? That expression of emotions. And again, it's not only limited to it's again, parent and children's relationship. It's very true that sometimes a parent could feel certain emotions about their child, maybe because they behave in a certain way or because they've acted in a certain way.
Yeah.
You bringing out that starting that conversation with a child opens up avenues for the child to reflect and to maybe even more value the relationship that you have, because again, there is value in being vulnerable in a relationship or in a space. I think
Yeah.
there's value in that, and the more we as a society can appreciate people's vulnerability, I think the more people would be open to sharing their feelings and their thoughts with others, right? So yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah.
Mhm. This is definitely transitioning us to why is it, again, we've talked about why people hesitate to express or to address their resentfulness towards others. Why do we hold on to it? I think there's kind of a nice transition. So
That's right.
why do we hold on to resentment? Why can't we let go?
Yeah. So the
Because people can hold a grudge, right?
yeah,
Somebody could hold a grudge for a long time and never tell you about it.
that's
Why
right.
are we why do we do that? Why can't we just let go?
Absolutely, it's interesting. It's psychological.
Mm,
So most often we feel like there is no closure or resolution. So it is a human nature to desire a sense of closure. So we let go. We don't want to let go of negative feelings. We don't want to let go of negative feelings. So we feel like there is no closure. If I let it go, if I go have that conversation, it means I'm just closing everything up. I just want to hold on to it. And it's sometimes it's funny how we like to cling or attach to keep nursing negativity. It's just funny. It's hard to explain that most often people like to nurse and nurture negative feelings instead of spending time nurturing positive feelings.
mhm,
So another thing will be confronting the issue head on is overwhelming, like we have explained here, that it makes you feel vulnerable, it makes you feel weak. It feels easier to feel resentment, to have the feeling of resentment than to work, or which working means to take time to confront the situation and to make amends, probably like in relationships, like the example that we've given. Then letting go makes you feel like you have lost your sense of control. The same thing that we're talking about, vulnerability on one hand and control on the other. If I go have a conversation with Asumha, it means I've just let go of that power that I have. So we see it, holding on to that resentment, to feelings of resentment, makes us feel like we have a sense of control. So if I were to address that feeling, then it means I've lost my sense of control. So letting go feelings like that is what we don't want to do, right? We just want to keep holding on to feelings that make us feel that I'm capable, I'm good, I'm in control, I'm in charge here, you know. So holding on to resentment also provides power and control, like we've said. So it provides a false and painful sense of power. That's it, a false and painful sense of power and control over the situation or the person. So it makes you feel that you have that power, so which is false, like I've said. Then it may feel like you're maintaining a psychological advantage, or maybe you're even protecting yourself from further harm. So now that's another part of it. So it makes you feel like you're maintaining a psychological advantage over that person, but at the same time, you're continuing to harm yourself. So letting go of resentment may seem like letting go of your power or your control, which most people do not want to let go. So it gives you that false thought. Yes, that I have a psychological advantage over this situation by me holding on to this feeling of resentment. And maybe it gives me that sense of I'm protecting myself from harm. That's very interesting. And trust me, these are some of those strong points that keeps people stuck to resentment. I don't want this person to harm me. I don't want the person to hurt me. So I'm not going to open up. I'm not going to have this conversation. Then resentment also acts like a coping mechanism, which
It's a terrible coping mechanism.
Yeah. So I don't want to be vulnerable. So I'm gonna be strong. I'm gonna do this so that I can be in charge. So you act it's very unconscious. You don't do it consciously. It's a very unconscious feeling, and it makes you feel like you're shielding yourself from future harm. So those are some of the points that will keep us stuck and glued to those feelings of resentment.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of the psychological piece. It's a lot more you in your head making all these calculations, right? And without necessarily, again, the next person doesn't even know. But here
That's
you
right.
are saying, I'm protecting myself from this person who doesn't even know that they're hurting you, right? Here you
Exactly.
are telling yourself that I'm strong and powerful, even though the other person hasn't really expressed any um weaknesses towards you. This is you telling yourself that, oh, you know so everything else is just happening in your head. And that is not a healthy, that is definitely not a healthy state to be in.
Exactly.
Not a healthy state to be in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, that's the situation.
Mm.
So it's like a protective mechanism, it's control, it's me trying to cope, protecting myself from being vulnerable. We've had the conversation. So that's it. People just feel that I want to continue keeping my sense of control. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick to it. I wouldn't want to let it go. I'll keep stuck. I'll be glued to it so that I continue to feel that I'm in control of the situation, or I'm in control of myself, or I don't
Right.
want to expose myself to more harm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I was reading somewhere, and people, some person was talking about how you know that you are harboring resentment.
Mm-hmm.
How do I tell that I'm harboring this feeling? Because, again, like we said, you have to get to a place where you can recognize that you have that feeling in you, right? That you are resentful about something. How do I tell that I am resentful? And again, not mixing it with other feelings, right? Because I'll give you an example. I'm having difficulty celebrating someone else's success. That could definitely be a sign indicating that I am resentful towards this person for some reason. Not because I don't want them to, I'm not celebrating their success because I really don't want them to be successful, but not celebrating their success because I have um, um, uh, uh, um, some resentful feeling towards them for maybe something that they did to me, or something that they don't even know that has happened, right? So it's that is one of the ways that you definitely can tell that you are harboring a feeling of resentment towards someone. Another way you might know, again, this would be just be looking within you, right? Is having um chronic irritability or emotional numbness towards someone. So someone that you have a resentment towards, if you see them, they sort of irritate you. Whatever they say, whether it's good or it's bad, whether they try to be helpful, you don't necessarily see that, and you get upset and even more angry towards them when you having some sort of resentment against them. And again, just not showing emotion. Once you have a certain sort of resentment towards someone, you don't show, like giving somebody the cold shoulder, where they might talk to you and you might just look at them and just walk away, or they might maybe come for a handshake and you just walk away. They might say something nice, maybe give you a compliment, and you would not even say thank you, like giving, really giving someone a cold shoulder, right? That is when that happens, you definitely know that there's something within you that you kind of need to look um into that. Sorry, I think.
So I actually had a technical problem on my end, so I've maneuvered and I've found my way around. So just to add some of the points on what you see, some of the things I would say when someone is resentful is they are not forgiving. They don't forgive.
They don't forgive,
They
right?
don't forgive. Yeah. So when you don't forgive, you stick to something, it hurts you, it builds up into more issues. Either socially, it develops, it leads you to health issues physically, then socially, you lose friends. It impacts your relationships negatively with people in the community. Then, of course, people begin to see you as someone who is not capable of keeping a good relationship with others. And unfortunately, we are all social beings. We need to find ways to work with others to continue to stay in the social network. So it impacts us negatively, physically, mentally, emotionally. You're always stressed. Then it impacts our relationships. Then you come off as someone who is not forgiving.
That is perfectly correct. I think I have one more. Um, could we, talk a little bit about the feeling of being stuck or drained when interacting with certain people? So you people that you have a certain sort of resentment against, and you feel like you're stuck, or you feel they drain you when you're interacting with them. Is that something that's common?
Yeah, that could be common, depending on how people treat you, right? Because we don't want to deny the fact that some people can be quite challenging to work with. Either they are not being respectful or they talk down on you. There are a lot of things that people could do to make you feel less of yourself around them, and that could lead to feelings of resentment. So we are not saying that being resentful is bad, because it's sometimes it's actually valid, right? The point, it's a strong, sometimes it's actually the situation actually warrants you to feel that way. But what we are encouraging is how you deal with the feelings of emotions so that it does not impact your daily living, so that it does not impact you, your health, and you going about your daily activities.
Perfect. So you've said, of course, there's might be some positive in terms of resentment being valid. How does resentment impact our well-being? I know you've highlighted a few points, but I kind of want us to have a little bit more detailed conversation on how it might affect us, right, in terms of impacting maybe our mental health or just our general well-being.
Okay.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that, a little bit more in depth? I know you've highlighted a few points.
I would start with the statement that you opened up the conversation with today, which is resentment is like drinking rat poison and waiting for the rat to die. So you drink it. That is a statement made by St. Augustine. So he says that when you're resentful, it's like you drinking poison and you expecting the rat to die. So that is one of the effects it has on you. You hurt yourself. Then the bitter lingering feeling often ends up negatively. It impacts you negatively. It causes us to retreat inward. So you kind of coil up. You don't express yourself. You're not honest with people around you. Then you focus on the negative and the sad part of relationships. So your mind is kind of just tilted. So your lens, you have just the lens of negative stuff. So you're picking just everything negative around you. Anything positive, you're actually sieving it and throwing it away. So that is what it does to you. Then holding, it helps you. What happens again? What impacts your well-being? What happens again is holding on to resentment can cause stress in the body. Like I said, physical. it impacts your health. So there is a study done by Health Psychology in 2018 that found that adults who held onto anger and hostility over the course of a decade experience greater cognitive decline.
Oh.
So it drains you mentally and it impacts your mental health negatively than those who were more apt to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
So you remember we had that conversation as on that once you're in that state, it just keeps you, it's like a ripple effect. It keeps building up and it keeps impacting other aspects of your life. And then, of course, nothing is improving. It only gets worse. So that is how it impacts your health. So I don't think there's anything positive to resentment here.
Contrary to my opinion.
Okay, what's your opinion about resentment then?
Again, it's just me thinking that resentment might motivate you to do a little bit more work on yourself. Again, which is, again, this might just be me looking at it, trying to find some positives in all the negatives that you have kind of listed, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that so take for example the conversation we had about being in a competitive environment, right? Does me being resentful in that environment motivates me to do a little bit more work, to go maybe above and beyond, and to do better for myself? Because again, and this might just be a selfish thing where I take for example, I have a friend in school. He's always first and I'm always third, and I've always wanted to be first in class, right? And of course there is a resentment because I want to be where he is, right? So I have a little bit of resentment against him. Does that feeling motivate me to study harder, to do more work, so I can eventually become first in my class? Or is that me just trying to find some positive in this situation?
No, your argument is right. Your argument is very right, because it's about how you're perceiving the situation.
Right.
If you're taking that, when we talk about resentment today, we are focusing on the part that builds up and is not managed well.
Yeah.
Meaning that it impacts your health and it impacts your relationships around you. That is the one we are focusing on. But if you're capable of turning the situation around and saying, hey, instead of me being jealous of my friend, I would rather work harder so that I can do better, then that is a positive situation out of, you've done something positive out of that. So that's a positive coping mechanism, because you turned it around to do something positive. But it becomes a problem when you continue to say, hey, maybe this guy or maybe the teacher is cheating. That is why he's always first in class. Instead of you saying, maybe he's better than myself, I should work better, I should work hard.
Right. So instead of finding blame and apportioning blame, you say, okay, maybe I need to do better for myself. Maybe I need to work hard, and that is where the positive coping mechanism kind of kicks in, right?
Yeah. You remember when we started, one of the first things that I said is that resentment it comes back on you. Because if you're angry at people, the problem should be you. The problem is how do you perceive things happening around you? How do you choose to manage them? How do you choose to cope with the situations that you find yourself in? Instead of resorting to going and fighting with a friend, I would rather walk away and say, this is not a healthy place for me. I walk away. So those are two different approaches.
Perfect. Just before we continue, there's a comment here that I wanted to read. It's kind of in line with the conversation we've just had, and I thought maybe I read it and have your thoughts. So just again, before we go, just to appreciate those who are online watching. If you are watching, please like the show and maybe share on your page so that we could have your friends and other people kind of join as we have this conversation. Hilary, I think you did send a message asking how you could join. I have sent you a Zoom link. So we are connecting through Zoom. You have to join through the link to come on the live show. And that is how we've been doing it the past couple of shows. So I just wanted to let you know. So Cynthia Cynthia Chick, I think that's the name. Cynthia, I'm reading your message.
It's an accountant.
Okay.
Accountant, yeah.
Certified accountant. This is the message. If one keeps grudges for almost everything about almost every person, then it might lead you to being perceived as bad in the society. Everyone is prone to mistakes, and we need to take it easy on ourselves and on everyone around us. I prefer people who address issues head on, or let me know when I do something wrong. I always fall sick when I am upset unless I say it out loud. Is that that is a strong feeling, right?
Yeah.
Where you that emotional feeling turns into a physical reaction towards that emotion, where someone falls sick. And I've heard someone say that they are so angry and so upset or so resentful about something that it makes them sick, it makes them unwell.
Yeah.
That is a trauma. And imagine if you felt like that every time someone offended you or wronged you. Imagine how miserable your life could be, right? Again,
Yeah.
any comments on the comment, any reaction to the comment that I just read?
No, also it's just it just falls in line. You remember throughout, if you start even with the opening statement that we have, that when you're resentful, it's like you drinking poison and expecting someone else to die, because you're hurting yourself. And like I said, it touches all the aspects of your well-being. It would impact your physical health, meaning that some people would have headache, some people will be trembling, some people even fall sick when they have unresolved issues like that. They fall sick, they stay in bed for days before they recover. It impacts your emotions, your emotional well-being. It impacts your mental well-being. It impacts your social relationships with others. All those areas of your lives are being impacted.
Sorry, I'm just sending a message to Cynthia to appreciate. Thank you. Hey, I also wanted us to move a little bit forward with this conversation. Yes. No, you go ahead.
I just wanted to say, maybe we can just look at some of the goals. Why would we let go of resentment? When you're letting go, what are some of the goals that you should have in mind? Because we've talked about the feeling of resentment is valid. We are not invalidating anyone's resentment in any way, right? But when we talk about letting go of resentment, what is the underlying goal? Why do we encourage people to let go of resentment? So the first thing is the goal first is never to let go of those feelings. No, your goal is not that I don't want to feel this way again. No, your feelings are valid and you have to acknowledge them, but rather you want to recognize those feelings. Like we are saying, recognize it. You're not like shoving your feelings and throwing them or sweeping it under the carpet. No, validate those feelings, recognize them, then try to understand what is at the root of that feeling. Why am I feeling this way? It goes back to even the question that I asked you when we started, that what is the need behind your resentment? What will make you feel better? Right? So I also want to think of, why are you unable to let go of these feelings? So ask yourself that question. These are reflexive questions to ask. When you're feeling resentful, you want to reflect and feel better or improve on the way you're feeling. So ask yourself, why am I unable to let go of my anger? Then also check in with yourself. Why do you feel wronged in this situation? You may be surprised that you were just overreacting. The situation was not as bad as you perceived it. When you reflect, that is what your reflection does. You look at situations from both sides Because most often when we are angry, we stick to just the things that we have picked up at that
Right.
time, to what works for us. But if you sit and reflect, you say, no, I think at that time this person said this, I answered this, then the person said that. It means my response led to this response that was not pleasing to me. That's just an example.
Yeah.
So you see that you're now taking responsibility of the situation. What part did I play in this situation? What role did I play to take this problem to this point, or to make me feel this way? So when you're able to be accountable to yourself about what role you played in the situation, then it would help you move on. Then what is the history of these feelings that you have? Sometimes some people have just grown up in an environment where they saw their parents behave in a specific way, and it's just natural for them to respond in that way. For instance, someone says, this is how I do things, this is all I know. That's it. So it's an either or, it's a black or white. But unfortunately, life is not black or white. So if you start doing that reflection and say, hey, probably this is the way I grew up, I saw my parents behave this way, that could be the root cause of why I probably get angry or I pick up every little signal around me. I fight all battles around me. So once you have that reflective thought, then it could help you to start knowing that you are the problem and not others as you think, as your mind was telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would start putting the work on yourself and not
Right.
trying to blame others or expecting much from others around you.
While you were talking, some funny story just came to mind where I went to this friend's place and got to the home, and everyone, husband and wife, everyone is just doing their thing. They're sitting there, they're talking to me, but they are not talking to each other. So when the wife left and I asked the husband, Mama, what did happen? And then he said, we need to talk. It kind of reminded me, because again, but you're definitely right, because one person needs to do the work.
That's right.
Why aren't we talking?
Yeah.
Why am I not feeling like I want to communicate with you? Right? Someone needs to do the work, and I think that is the hard part, where you have to sit and reflect and think about whatever situation might have happened and your role. Because most of the time we have the feeling of resentment, but we don't recognize our role.
The role we played in the situation.
That we played in that situation, right?
Yeah.
It's always about the other person.
It's always about the other person.
Down and reflect. Then you might come to realize that, hey, that reaction might just have been because of because again, there's action and there's reaction. It might just have been because I acted in a certain way, and then they were just reacting in reacting to the action that I took, right? And it takes a really serious mind to think about that and to acknowledge their role. Because you can think about it all you want, if you don't admit your own faults or your own contributions to that situation, right, it would be hard to confront someone and have that conversation. Sometimes you recognize your role in that event and you choose to not have the conversation, because you know that if you approach this person and challenge them on what they did to give to develop that feeling, they would challenge me back. They would know that, hey, I also played a role in this, and they just might not want to do it. So yeah, I like that. There's a lot of reflection that needs to happen, and acknowledging. There's a lot of acknowledgement. You need to acknowledge your role, if you had any role to play in that situation, right? Which definitely. So
most often we have a role that we've played, but like I said, most often, because it's easier to feel resentful and blame others, we don't want to do the work. You remember we talked about people don't want to do the work, and the work requires you to reflect. What happened? Right. How did this situation build up?
Right.
What part did I play? No one wants to address that part. We want to say Asun was a problem, not me, Lillian.
It's everyone else but us.
but us, but of which most often, if you look at how a situation builds up, there was one thing that you did. It's like fire catching, and you keep adding fuel and oxygen or whatever, and if the fire keeps going, it keeps burning down, right? It keeps burning places and going. So, what role did I play? Ask yourself that question. And
That
then
is that is
we have to be honest with ourselves. If you're not honest with yourself, then you're not helping yourself as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely agree. We definitely do need to think about what it is that we've done to
Mhm.
create that unhealthy environment for ourselves, right? Um, how what how do we deal how should we approach resentment? What should we do? How do we get to a place where we can let go of this feeling? What
Mhm.
is it that we need to do?
So I'll just talk about a few strategies that can
A
help
few
you let
strategies, right?
that can help you let go of resentment. So the first thing is you want to understand what is the source of this my feeling. Where is it coming from? Because sometimes, as long it's interesting, there are times when I am angry and I can't even tell you why I'm angry. Have you
Hmm.
ever experienced something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel that I'm so bitter that I can't
Hmm.
explain. If you were to ask me, what is your problem now? How can I help you? I will not have an answer. So it is very important to sit down, reflect, and understand the source of your resentment. Identify the reasons why you're holding on to these feelings.
Hmm.
Is it a form of self protection for you? Ask yourself that question. Am I just trying to protect myself, or I just don't want to lose control of a certain situation? It is good to have that self reflection. Once you have those reflections, it's going to help you. It will be a step towards moving away from that feeling of resentment. Then examine your expectations. Sometimes we have so high expectations and unrealistic expectations given the situations that we find ourselves with. So
Right.
consider what is realistic for the other person, and then is it an apology that I need, or who or why not? So reflect on the situation and check what are your expectations from that situation. That is why I would ask you, I kept saying that, what do you need? If your wife is angry at you and she's giving out, just ask her that, what would you need me to do to make things right? Straight up.
Hmm.
The mistake has been made. What can we do to make things right? So, what are your expectations for me going forward? It solves the problem. Straight up, short, and you cut it. Then the next thing you want to do, think about as some of the strategies that would help you let go of resentment is practice gratitude.
Right.
We are not grateful. We just live in a world where we just keep demanding, asking for more, and we don't take time out to be grateful for the little things that happens around us. We are not grateful for the little efforts our partners do. We are not grateful for the way our kids relate with us. We are not grateful. So examine the ways that the offender has impacted your life, other than focusing on the offense. So what are this person that I'm mad at? Okay, I'm angry at this person, or I'm resentful towards this person. Let me reflect on this situation. How has my relationship with this person been? What are some of the positive things that this person has done to me in the past? When you start picking out those little things that you can be grateful for, it would start walking you towards the path of letting go of resentment. So practicing gratitude helps you keep record of the good things in your
Hmm.
life and how they outweigh the negative ones. Because when we are resentful, the only thing we see is like, it's bad, the situation is so bad, it's negative. For no minute do you think of one thing positive. But if you were to sit back for 1 minute and say, hey, is there anything positive this person has ever done in your life? You will be surprised that they are uncountable. So having that reflection and trying to pick out some things that you could be grateful for could help
Hmm.
you walk away from resentment. Then some tips. to help you walk away from resentment. So one, you want to acknowledge the feelings. You want to determine the source of the resentment. You want to examine your role in the situation which we have discussed. Communicate your feelings. Communicating your feelings is not being vulnerable. It is rather the power that you have between resolving that problem or you staying and wallowing in your resentment.
Right.
So that is the power you have. Communicate your feelings to the person who is involved in the situation. Now, that doesn't mean that you go and yell at someone. It means that you have a positive conversation, a healthy conversation with that person. Then forgive yourself. Treat yourself with some compassion.
Mhm.
Be kind to yourself. Why am I supposed to be sad all the time? I deserve to be happy. The moment I tell myself that self-talk, I would start focusing on positive things around me, and that naturally just moves me away from the feeling of resentment.
Mhm.
Then forgive others as well. So forgive yourself, forgive others. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Forgive others. Let go. This person made a mistake. This person is human. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, right?
Mhm.
Let go of the anger and bitterness. Move on. Spend time with positive people. Avoid venting to others. Don't spend your time complaining and complaining. It just drains you and it hurts you mentally. It impacts your emotions. Then don't hold on to grudges. Practice gratitude, like we've said. Seek professional help. If you think that you need it, then seek help. That's why counselors are there.
Mhm.
Try to see the situation from the other person's perspective. Let me try to understand what this person meant when this person said this. How can I understand let me try to put my feet in the other person's shoes. Sometimes when you do that, you will get to a point that you'll be compassionate towards the other person. Then of course, naturally, it takes you away from that feeling of resentment. Then focus on the present and the future
Yeah,
instead
now.
of speaking on the past and like, oh my God, I can't move on. It's so bad. No, that is the past. There is a present. You have the capacity to change the narrative of the present, and you equally have the capacity to change the narrative of the future. So those are opportunities that we have that we can take decisions that will move us into a more positive direction than us sticking and wallowing in our resentment. So being open to new opportunities or to alternatives can be quite helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah, so those are some little tips and tricks on how to walk your feelings away from resentment.
I think the what stood up for me was, the compassion piece. Taking it easy on yourself
Mhm.
and easy on the people that may have wronged you, or that you might feel that they might have wronged you, right? Because again, we just like, Cynthia mentioned, we are
Mhm.
all human and we are prone to making mistakes,
That's right.
and we are also it is also okay to feel in a certain way, right? So if you're
Mhm.
feeling resentment, yeah, it's fine. Don't judge yourself, don't beat yourself up. It's recognizing that feeling, and then and dealing with it in more positive ways, right? I think
Mhm.
that is definitely what stood up for me. I think also forgiveness. And again, I was going to ask, can you forgive someone and still be resentful? Because again, it feels like forgiveness is easier said. You could say I forgive you, but still have that strong emotions about that person. So what, I'm sure there's definitely a strong connection between, forgiving someone and letting go. But most of the time, don't we forgive but still hold on to whatever it is that we've forgiven? Would you agree that that is a common
Uh,
uh
as on what I would say to that is forgiveness is not instantaneous. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It's a journey. It's like
right?
healing. Healing is not a 1 day's job or a 1 hour's job.
Hmm.
So it starts by me vocalizing that I want to forgive this person. So immediately I'm not gonna feel like normal, okay, I will still have those feelings coming up. But as time goes by, if I continue to dwell in that mindset, then gradually I'll be walking closer to or away from resentment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. Yes.
yeah, so healing is not an either or, it's not black or white. No, it's a journey. So all what we need is just to start up and say, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be.
Mhm.
Then we start taking the baby steps to walk towards forgiveness.
And what do you think with this comment? Complete forgiveness goes with forgetting. They say forgive and forget. So some people say forgive, but don't forget.
It's not fair to say someone should forget now, because we all have memories. Our memories are active. So how would you forget something that has happened to you?
Forgive,
But then
and forget. So
when
it's not a proper phrase to use.
I don't think it's right to say that. You cannot forget. There is no way you forget, because your memory, you're not a dead person, right? It's only when you're dead that your memory loses track of certain things. Now, the only thing is, when you forgive, you will not hold on, you will not be resentful.
It would not be
You
yes.
will not hold on, you wouldn't look at that person in the light of wanting to hurt that person or wanting to pick up a fight. No. You would let it go, but then it doesn't mean that you forget. To forget doesn't mean that you don't necessarily need to forget in order to forgive. I don't agree with that.
Perfect. Let me test your. No, it's not a test. Let me just throw this out there. What are alternatives to holding grudges? Or no, to being resentful? What can I do that might take the place of resentment? Somebody was recommending journaling. That when you journal, when you write your feelings down, it's a way of channeling and putting those emotions into getting it out of you and putting
Letting it out.
kind of letting it out and letting it go. You might not go have that conversation with the individual that you have this resent that this feeling of resentment towards, but again, just putting it down somewhere in writing,
Yeah.
the opportunity to, again, because when you write, you reflect, you're thinking about what it is that you're writing down, right? And it gives you the opportunity to reflect on the story that you're putting down, and maybe when you eventually pick it up, maybe a day or two after, and read it again, it might a few things might come up that you probably didn't have thought about at the time you were writing, or at the time that you had that emotions in you, right? Are there any other ways of other alternatives to holding this resentment?
There are a lot of things that we could do to work on our feelings of resentment.
Were you going to get to this, or did I just cut?
No, it wasn't really part of our conversation, but we can just touch on it.
Yeah, touch on it, please.
It's simple. There are different things. It's the question simply sounds like, what do you do when you're stressed? What are some tips to do when you're stressed? So for some people, they would prefer to write down to let out that energy. Others will say, hey, let me go for a walk, for exercise.
Right.
The moment I stop that feeling, when I have those thoughts running through my mind, I would get up, create some time, go out for exercise. By the time I come back, I feel energized, I feel relaxed. Then, of course, the feeling has gone. For some people, like us who like watching movies, I would go turn on the TV, pick a good movie, and the moment I start watching, I am engrossed and engaged in my movie, and all those thoughts that I have is gone. Some people like cooking, so get into an activity, do something.
Yeah. Get
yourself to get out, to let it out. Do something. Instant, when you have those feelings, try to do something different. If it's someone who likes cooking, get into the kitchen, start cooking. Then another thing that could be quite helpful is if you have a good support system, someone who you can talk to.
Mhm.
And if you picked up your phone and told me, hey, Lydian, my wife did this to me, I'll say, so you know, when you did this, this is what led to your wife behaving this way. And you say, I didn't really think it this way. I didn't reflect, Then automatically, once you have that positive talk, then of course it's leading you now towards the right path, because you start thinking that maybe I said, rather you have to go ask for, you have to apologize to your wife, and then it changes your mind. It takes you off the thought of, oh, my wife wasn't good enough, she didn't do that. Then you start thinking of ways to build up your relationship instead of being resentful. So having a good support system could be quite helpful in dealing with feelings like this.
And again, just wanted to add to what you said, Lillian, a good support system of people who would hold you accountable to your actions, right? Not people who would agree with you for everything that you did, but people who would hold you accountable and call you out. Because I know that I have group of friends. I have a support system, a large one. And I know those who would agree with me no matter what I have done. And I know those who would hold me accountable.
Who will tell you straight up.
In a situation like this, you want to talk to those who
are objective,
who would look at the situation, look at the big picture, and be able to indicate where you were at fault, what you did right, and what you should do next, right? Because again, we have friends, and we know I have friends who are die-hearted. If I say we jump, they don't ask me why would it not. Everybody would jump immediately, right? So not people like that would not hold you accountable.
Will not tell you the truth.
Will not tell you the truth. So yes, I just kind of wanted to add that to.
So a good support system is quite valuable in helping you walk through challenging situations, stress, mental health, resentment is a very big factor. Yeah.
Another way Cynthia indicates that Christians would pray, talk to God, and that's one way of doing it.
You could spirituality.
Also, meditate if you are into something like that. She says she sings. Or may go out for a workout, of course. Exercise is a good way to get you out of that repetitive, recurring thought in your head, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's a good one. Yeah, religion and spirituality, it could be a good tool to use to walk you out of those negative thoughts. Yeah.
So as we kind of round up, Lillian, again, just correct me if I'm wrong. Did we already talk? Because again, we did mention using resentment, hate, anger, things like that, almost as if you kind of explained. Do you want to just briefly highlight what's the difference between resentment and hate? Can you be resentful? Can you have a feeling of resentment and not hate somebody, or do they have to kind of go hand in hand?
So hate will be I hate this person, I hate you, but I am resentful about a specific situation. So hate will be a bigger term.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hate this person, but I'm resentful about this situation, about this issue. So hate will be a bigger word to use. Hate will touch many aspects.
It is a more serious emotion, a more serious feeling.
That is right. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Resentment and anger. Difference.
Resentment and anger. Anger is a starting point of resentment. You start by being angry about a situation, then it builds up and it develops into resentment.
Right. Perfect. And we really can't end this conversation without, talking about what role you are a therapist. And that is definitely the base for your interest in mental health and in having the conversations. So it would be, I guess it would be unfair to us and of course to you to not ask you to tell us what role therapy plays in dealing with or in managing or in addressing this feeling of resentment. So I'll let you take it however you want, but again, just what would be a role of a therapist, or what does the therapy play in this conversation?
I've actually been waiting for the question, Ason. Yeah. So therapy is quite helpful in helping you deal with feelings of or emotions of resentment. So the first thing therapy would help you do is to help you be in a good place, such that you can learn to process and manage your emotions of resentment.
Mm.
So most often when we are stressed or we are experiencing those feelings of resentment, we are not usually in a good space. But when you seek therapy, it puts you in that space, that safe space where you are comfortable to let out. Now, when you put yourself in that space where you're comfortable to let out, it helps you process those feelings, and you will be honest with yourself when you're thinking right, when you're in that good space to process the situation and manage those emotions. Then you'll be taught different skills, like some of these skills that we talked about: distraction, take a break,
Mm-hmm.
or talk to someone, pray, go to church, talk to a close person. When you attend therapy, we work with you depending on what you're presenting with. We support you to build those skills. Some people already have the skills, they just need you to remind them. It just depends on what the individual is presenting with. Then we have different forms of therapies that could help you in different ways. For instance, cognitive behavioral therapy would help you identify those negative thoughts and behaviors. So we talked about you always having those negative thoughts, and then it always comes off in your behaviors. Either you're stonewalling your partner, or you're being insultive, or you're throwing things around, whatever it is, or you're drinking. Some people drink when they are stressed, right? Or they take drugs or whatever it is. So with CBT, with cognitive behavioral therapy, it would help you to identify those negative thoughts and those behaviors that comes along with those negative thoughts. Then, and how it contributes to the feeling of resentment. Then teach you now positive ways or positive skills to replace those negative thoughts that you have. Then we also have the dialectical behavioral therapy, which helps you develop skills to deal with those difficult emotions. So it helps you not to turn to dysfunctional coping mechanisms like taking drugs or alcohol that we've mentioned before. Then trauma-informed care therapy. That type of therapy helps you to process and to heal from your past trauma. Asong, I think I did mention earlier on that some people have just learned how to respond to certain situations based on the way they grew up, or
Right.
based on experiences they have had in the past. So if this is what my client is presenting with, then it means that I would have to work with this client using the trauma-informed care therapy. So we would discuss about things, their traumatic events in the past, and link it up and try to make meaning out of it and how it is impacting their present day life. It's like telling a divorcee that your experience of divorce seems to be impacting your present day life. The way you analyze, the way you look at things seems to be this is a root source. So when people are clear about where their thoughts are coming from, then it makes it easier for them to know how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So trauma-informed care may help to contribute, and you want to know, it helps you to process your thoughts, process your experiences, how it impacts your feelings of resentment today, then help you to find out ways on how to cope in more healthy ways. So those are some different, therapies that could be used with different clients depending on what they are presenting with.
Mm. Perfect. Well, before we get to our closing remarks, I just, of course, want to appreciate you again for being part of this conversation. this mental health series is pretty important, and feedback that we get after our shows are usually always very positive, and because again it has an impact on those who take the opportunity to kind of listen and to learn. This topic has been very insightful. Generally, you have feelings, you don't really know what they are. You might be resentful, you might be angry, you might hate something or someone. But again, just kind of knowing that these feelings are valid, but again, it's just how we manage them, right? How we deal with them. That is important. So yeah, thank you again. And again, just to extend appreciation to those who have been online with us for an hour, 30 minutes. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the comments that we've had. It does definitely expand our conversation. So thank you very much. Lydian, what are your closing remarks, if you have any?
I don't want to say much.
Okay.
Very simple, very straightforward.
Mhm.
So forgiveness is not something that we do for other people. We do it for ourselves to get well and to move on. So forgiveness is a favor that we do to ourselves and not to others. So we forgive others in order to get well and to move on.
Because of course, hard to move on without forgiving, right?
What are your thoughts about that?
No, I think you're right. I agree. It's hard to move on if you don't forgive, because you're stuck. Unless you get to a place where you say, okay, I see where the problem is, I recognize it, I am choosing to forgive you so that I can move on with my life. I think that is definitely a good place that people should be at, where you could deal with something, leave it behind, not forget it, but be able to move on to better things, right? So yeah, I definitely take that with me. Again, in short, stop drinking. You're drinking poison and hoping that other people die. Like you said,
Oh my!
if you have a rat problem, the poison is not for you. It's for the rats. I
It's for
think
the
that
right.
is.
Yeah.
I
So you
think
should let
I
go
think
of resentment.
so. Let go, deal with the problem, and
Mhm.
and then move forward with your life. Right. I think that's a good place to stop. Lillian. Thank you again very much for for taking the time to be here. I know you're a busy mom, and we appreciate when you take 2 hours of your evening to come chat with us. And again, we hope to do this again soon. It's been a while since we were on, so we're hoping to get back to a flow. We had a flow, so we're hoping to get back to it.
It's just been 1 month that we didn't come. I wonder, has it been up to a month?
Isn't it? It feels like a long time. Maybe it's just me enjoying the conversation so much that I miss not having it, even after it's just two.
I see. Okay. That's
Thank you
interesting.
very much. We'll see you around. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.